What if the reason you feel stuck isn't because you're broken, but because your mind was never meant to see this far? What if higher realities aren't hidden from you, but filtered out? The same way the eye ignores what it was never trained to notice? Pause for a moment, take a breath, and notice how quickly the mind wants to label these words as true or false. That reflex is the first barrier. Most minds don't fail to access higher realities because they lack intelligence. They fail because they are overtrained, trained to categorize, to defend identities, to cling to familiar narratives like life rafts in an endless sea. From the moment we learn language, reality begins to shrink. A tree becomes tree. A feeling becomes fear or desire, and the infinite mystery of existence collapses into symbols that feel safe. Carl Jung once suggested that the modern human lives trapped inside a psychic house built by others. Walls made of beliefs, windows shaped by culture, and a ceiling defined by fear. We call this house normal consciousness, but normal doesn't mean complete. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how children perceive the world before they learn how to think about it? Time feels fluid, identity feels soft, reality feels alive. Then, schooling begins. Not just academic schooling, but emotional conditioning. Don't trust what you feel, trust what you're told. Don't question the structure, adapt to it. Slowly, subtly, the mind learns its primary function, survival through conformity. Higher realities don't threaten the body. They threaten the story, and the ego is that story. Eckhart Tolle described the ego as a psychological structure made of past and future. It survives by referencing memory and projecting expectation. Notice how rarely the mind rests in now without commentary. Silence feels uncomfortable. Stillness feels empty, and emptiness feels dangerous. Because in silence, the ego has nothing to hold on to. This is why most minds never cross the threshold. Higher realities are not reached by adding knowledge. They are accessed by subtracting noise. Neuroscience quietly confirms this. Studies from Harvard show that the default mode network, the brain system responsible for self-referential thinking, becomes quieter during deep meditation. Less me, less narrative, less resistance. And in that quiet, something else begins to speak. Alan Watts used to say that trying to understand the universe with the thinking mind is like trying to bite your own teeth. The mind cannot observe higher reality because it is the object being observed. Quantum physics stumbled into the same paradox. The observer effect suggests that observation alters reality at the fundamental level, not metaphorically, literally. But what we rarely ask is, what happens when the observer itself changes? Most minds are locked into a narrow band of perception because identity acts like a filter. You don't see reality as it is. You see reality as you are. Trauma tightens this filter. Belief systems harden it. Unquestioned assumptions fossilize it. Over time, consciousness becomes local instead of universal. Think of awareness like light passing through a prism. A clear prism reveals the full spectrum. A cracked one distorts it. Higher realities require transparency. But transparency demands vulnerability, and vulnerability is what the conditioned mind avoids at all costs. Notice how often the mind seeks certainty, opinions, labels, conclusions. Certainty feels like control, but control is the opposite of openness. Lao Tzu wrote that the usefulness of a cup lies in its emptiness, yet we spend our lives filling ourselves with answers, wondering why nothing new can enter. There is a moment, often during crisis, loss, or deep exhaustion, when the mind briefly loosens its grip. In those moments, people report strange clarity, timelessness, a sense of unity, not because they achieved something, but because something fell away. The barrier was never intelligence. It was attachment. Attachment to identity, attachment to thought, attachment to the illusion of control. Higher realities are not elsewhere. They are beneath the noise. Right now, as you listen, there is awareness noticing these words. That awareness is already beyond the mind. It doesn't argue. It doesn't resist. It simply witnesses. Most minds overlook this because they are trained to be the voice, not the listener. But the listener is the doorway, when attention turns inward without effort, when thought is allowed to pass without engagement, when silence is not filled. Something ancient stirs, not excitement, not fear, recognition. A remembering older than language. This is why force doesn't work, why chasing enlightenment fails, why spiritual ambition becomes another ego mask. Higher realities reveal themselves when the seeker relaxes, when the mind stops trying to climb and learns to sink, like a diver descending beneath surface waves, discovering that the chaos was never the ocean, only the surface. You don't access higher realities, you uncover them. They were always here, and the mind that cannot reach them is the same mind that believes it must. Most people never realize this simple truth. The mind is an interface, not the source. It evolved to help you navigate danger, predict patterns, and maintain identity, not to perceive infinity, not to hold paradox, not to dissolve itself. So when the mind approaches higher realities, it does what it always does. It tries to own them. It asks, what does this mean about me? How do I use this? Am I enlightened now? And the moment those questions arise, the doorway closes. Because higher realities don't respond to grasping, they respond to availability. This is where psychology and spirituality quietly meet. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, not as something evil, but as everything consciousness refuses to look at. Unfelt grief, unexpressed truth, suppressed fear, forgotten innocence. These unintegrated parts act like static in the signal. You cannot tune into higher frequencies while large portions of yourself remain unheard. This is why spiritual bypassing fails. Positive thinking cannot reach higher realities. Affirmations cannot open them. Belief alone cannot sustain them. Only honesty can. Notice how rare it is to sit with discomfort without explaining it away. The mind either distracts itself or narrates the pain into a story. But higher awareness doesn't need explanation. It needs presence. Eckhart Tolle once described pain as a portal, not because suffering is noble, but because resistance collapses in its intensity. When resistance collapses, presence remains, and presence is the access key. Most minds avoid this because presence feels like groundlessness. No labels, no timeline, no reference point. The ego panics here. It asks, who am I without my thoughts? And the silence answers, exactly. Modern neuroscience supports this more than we realize. Deep contemplative states show reduced activity in brain regions associated with self-boundaries. The sense of I becomes porous, not gone, but spacious. And in that spaciousness, perception expands. Not outward, inward. Because higher realities are not other worlds, they are deeper layers of this one. The same moment, the same breath, the same awareness, filtered differently. Think of a radio stuck on one station. The signal isn't limited because other frequencies don't exist. It's limited because the dial hasn't moved. Most minds cling to one frequency their entire lives, the frequency of becoming better, becoming safer, becoming more spiritual. But higher realities are accessed through being, not becoming. This is the great paradox. The harder you try to ascend, the more gravity pulls you back into identity. The softer you rest, the more reality reveals itself. This is why ancient teachings emphasize surrender, not as weakness, but as precision. To surrender is to stop interfering, to stop narrating the moment, to stop editing experience, to stop asking reality to match expectation. Just for a breath. Notice the sensation of being alive, not the idea, the sensation. That subtle aliveness has no boundary, no belief system, no history. It doesn't belong to you, you belong to it. And here is the quiet truth few talk about. Most minds can't access higher realities because society doesn't reward those who do. Presence doesn't produce faster output. Silence doesn't generate metrics. Inner clarity threatens external control. So the system trains minds to stay noisy, distracted, fragmented. Endless stimulation replaces depth. Information replaces wisdom. But something in you already knows this. That's why these words resonate, not intellectually, but somatically. A subtle recognition beneath thought. You've tasted this before, maybe during awe or deep love, or a moment when time vanished. Those weren't accidents. They were glimpses beyond the filter. And the filter can loosen, not by force, not by belief, but by attention. Gentle, curious, unattached. Higher realities aren't reached in the future. They appear when the present is fully inhabited. Right now, nothing is missing. Nothing needs fixing. Awareness is already whole. And when the mind finally rests from trying to reach beyond itself, what remains is what was always there. Still, vast, listening. You don't need to escape the mind. You need to see it clearly. and once seen, it no longer blocks the view.